My wife's name is Lin Xia, and she has a younger sister named Lin Enai. They were married for less than a year before divorcing due to her husband's infidelity. Out of concern for her reputation, my wife did not allow her younger sister to return to her rural hometown, as the gossip in the village could easily ruin a divorced woman's life. After much consideration, 30-year-old Lin and I decided to move in with us. Fortunately, our home has 3 bedrooms and a living room, and my wife and I haven't had children yet. The 3 of us don't feel cramped living together, but after all, she is my sister-in-law, so there are inevitably some inconveniences in daily life. For example, we share a bathroom. The only place in the house where we can hang clothes to dry is on the balcony of our master bedroom. My wife loves her sister and doesn't mind having her live under the same roof as me, her brother-in-law. I didn't feel comfortable expressing my own thoughts, because I knew Lin Xia would say, "You're not thinking anything impure, are you?" In the end, it's just me feeling awkward. My sister-in-law, though married, still has a carefree nature. She doesn't hesitate to be around me at home. After taking a shower, she wraps herself in a towel and comes into our room to hang clothes. I lie in bed, watching her, unable to say anything, but feeling a bit awkward inside. Since it was summer, Lin and I would wear shorts every day and sit cross-legged in the living room watching TV. Her shapely legs would walk back and forth in the living room, making me dizzy. This went on for a week. One day, Lin Xia suddenly said she had to go on a business trip. I complained about it on the surface, but inside I was overjoyed. My wife is a bit of a neat freak, the kind who insists on keeping the house spotless, forcing me to live by her standards every day. I'm already tired from work, and I can't even relax at home. Finally, she left on her business trip, and I could enjoy a few days of freedom. I was secretly delighted. Lin and I had the same idea as me. Although Lin and I and Lin Xia were sisters, their personalities were very different. It was like one was a mature woman and the other was a young girl. The mature woman was organized, while the young girl was free-spirited. However, with Lin Xia gone, a problem arose. I can't cook, and although Lin and I is married, she still seems to have retained her youthful spirit. She bounces around like a fairy every day. Unfortunately, fairies can't cook either, and they don't like doing housework. With my wife away on a business trip, our only reliable source of meals was cut off. In the past, my wife's trips were short, just 2 or 3 days, so I would just cook instant noodles or order takeout to get by. But this time was different. My wife's company was setting up a branch overseas, and the team would be there for a month. We couldn't survive on takeout and instant noodles every day. My sister-in-law and I looked at each other helplessly. Fortunately, the company provided lunch. We only had to figure out what to eat after work in the evening. After eating takeout for several days, the 2 of us were at our wits' end. On Friday, just before quitting time, the sky suddenly turned cloudy. Dark clouds covered the sky at a visible speed. After work, I rushed out the door and hurriedly took the bus home. I hoped that it wouldn't rain before I got home. But as luck would have it, halfway there, it started pouring. The raindrops pounded on the bus windows. In no time, the road was flooded. The bus was moving very slowly, partly because of the heavy rain and partly because there were so many cars on the road. The rain mixed with the sound of car horns and pounded urgently on the bus windows. Z dozed off. Before the rain started, I sent a message to Lin and I asking if she had arrived home yet, but she didn't reply. I decided not to think about it anymore. As her brother-in-law, it's okay to care, but being too concerned might not be appropriate. I slept for about an hour before the sound of my phone woke me up. When I opened my eyes, the bus had already stopped at the bus stop near my neighborhood. I stood up and got off the bus just before the doors closed. It was still raining, but not as hard as before. After getting off the bus, I quickly took shelter under the bus stop shelter to avoid the rain. Because of the rain, there weren't many people waiting for the bus at that moment. I could vaguely see someone sitting on a bench nearby, but my glasses were wet from the rain, so I couldn't see clearly. I took off my glasses and wiped the lenses with the corner of my short-sleeved shirt. Only then did I notice that it was Lin and I. She was standing under the shelter, holding an umbrella and glaring at me. I greeted her in surprise. "Hey. What a coincidence. You just got off the bus too? Lynn and I glared at me and said coldly, yeah. What a coincidence. Didn't you check your phone? I reached into my pocket to check my phone and saw several missed calls. I scratched my head awkwardly and explained, I fell asleep. Lynn and I sneezed. She threw her umbrella at me and stormed off home alone. I picked up the umbrella from the ground and hurried after her. Lynn and I must have been waiting in the rain for a long time, as her clothes were completely soaked. Her white t-shirt was soaked with rain and clinging to her body. I apologized to Lynn and I, but she didn't respond. When we got home, Lynn and I went into the bathroom to take a shower. I felt my rain-soaked clothes and went into the house to change. I took off my short-sleeved shirt, wiped my wet hair, and randomly found a clean shirt in the closet to put on. At that moment, Lindy's voice mixed with the sound of running water came from the bathroom. Brother-in-law, can you help me get a towel from my room? Hearing Lindy's words, I was delighted. I had already felt guilty for her bringing me the umbrella. Seeing her take the initiative to talk to me, I immediately replied, okay, I'll change and be right there. I pushed open the door to the second bedroom, feeling a little curious. Since Lynn and I moved in, I had never been to the second bedroom across the hall. Because I was helping Lynn and I get a towel, this was my first time entering the room. Except for the layout of the room, the air inside seemed to have become sweet and fragrant. I looked around the room curiously and called out to Lynn and I, where did you put the bath towel? Bang! Lynn and I opened the bathroom door a crack, and her voice mixed with water vapor drifted towards me. It's in the cabinet against the wall. You'll see it when you open it. After hearing that, I walked straight over, opened the cabinet, and a woman's fragrance wafted out. Sure enough, I saw the pink bath towel hanging on the clothes rack in the cabinet. At the same time, I also caught a glimpse of some of Lindy's undergarments. I felt inexplicably flustered, but I managed to suppress it. I picked up the bath towel and walked toward the bathroom door. Lynn and I immediately reached out her hand, still dripping with water. I didn't dare to look and turned away, heading to the living room. It was still raining outside the window. I sat on the living room sofa thinking about sending Lin Xia a message, but then I realized it was probably still late at night, so I put my phone down. I turned on the TV and started flipping through the channels out of boredom. After a while, Lynn and I wrapped herself in a bath towel and came out of the bathroom. You should take a hot shower too, brother-in-law, don't catch a cold. I watched Lynn and I walk around the living room wrapped in a towel. I glanced at the clock on the wall and thought, it's still early, it might be awkward for the two of us to stay in the house like this. I might as well take a shower in the bathroom to kill some time. I stood up and walked toward the bathroom. I pushed open the door, and the steam hadn't completely dissipated yet. A faint fragrance of body wash filled the bathroom. I turned around and locked the door. I took off my clothes, out of habit. I wanted to put my clothes on the rack, but I unexpectedly found that Lynn and I hadn't picked up her wet clothes and had left them on the rack. I couldn't help but freeze, feeling my face flush. This little girl is so careless. She just left her underwear lying around like that. I looked around but couldn't find anywhere else to put the clothes, so I sighed helplessly. I gently placed the clothes on top of hers. I turned on the shower head and started showering. Let's have instant noodles for dinner, brother-in-law. It's raining too hard to order takeout. Lindy's voice came from the living room. Okay, sure, make me some with seafood, I replied while drying myself off. After getting dressed, I stepped out of the bathroom. Lynn and I had already prepared the noodles and thoughtfully added some ham for me. The two of us sat at the dining table and slurped up the noodles. I'm going to catch a cold. It's all your fault, brother-in-law. I want chicken soup tomorrow. You figure it out. Lynn and I sneezed and complained as she looked at me. I felt embarrassed and quickly picked up the instant noodle bowl, took a sip of soup, and mumbled, okay, it's the weekend tomorrow. I'll order some chicken soup for lunch. No way. Is that your apology? I kindly brought you an umbrella and waited for you in the rain for so long. You're just going to order takeout? You have to make it yourself, Lin and I said angrily. I smiled awkwardly and replied, I don't know how to cook. If I do it, it'll just be a disaster. If you can't cook, why don't you learn? I'll forgive you when you make something I like, otherwise, I'll tell my sister that you're bullying me, Lin and I said arrogantly as she took a sip of her noodles. No, I'll make it for you, just don't tell my sister. If it's not good, don't blame me, I replied helplessly. Lin and I burped triumphantly. Burp, I'm full, clean up, I'm going back to sleep. With that, she patted her butt and went back to her room. I sighed heavily and finished the last bite of noodles. Unable to stand my little sister Lin's nagging, I lay in bed and started searching for recipes for chicken soup. The next day, it was still dark. I got up early as usual to go for a morning run. The air after the rain smelled especially good. After exercising, I ate breakfast by the side of the road and packed soy milk and fried dough sticks for Lin and I. I knew Lin and I liked to sleep in. When I got home, I didn't disturb her and put the breakfast on the table. Then I got up again and went to the market to buy ingredients for the chicken soup. It was my first time buying groceries. Linxia always did it herself. I went straight to the market, bought what I needed, and headed home without delay. Unexpectedly, by the time I returned, it was almost 10 o'clock. When I got home, I found that the breakfast I had left on the table hadn't been touched. Has this little girl not gotten up yet? That's not right, she's usually up by now, I wondered to myself. I called out tentatively from the living room, Lin and I, are you still asleep? The soy milk is getting cold. There was no response from inside the house. I tried calling a few more times, but still no answer. I wondered if she was still asleep or had gone out. So I walked to the door and gently turned the handle, surprised to find that it wasn't locked. I peeked through the crack and saw her on the bed. I tried calling out to Lin and I. She still didn't respond. A bad feeling rose in my heart. I'm coming in. I took a step into the room. That's when I saw Lin and I lying on the bed, her face red. I hurried over and touched her forehead. It was very hot. Could she have fainted from a fever after catching a cold last night? I tried to shake her body to wake her up, but she didn't wake up. No, I have to take her to the hospital, I muttered to myself. I immediately pulled back the covers and tried to carry Lin and I to the hospital. That's when I suddenly realized that Lin and I was completely naked. The intense visual shock took my breath away, and I felt awkward and didn't know what to do. I couldn't help but complain in my heart, how could this girl still have this habit? What should I do? After thinking it over, I finally made up my mind. Her life was more important than anything else. I turned around, frantically searched for some clothes in the cabinet behind me, put them on her, and carried her on my back. Then I hailed a taxi and rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, Lin and I was not in any serious danger. The doctor diagnosed her as simply suffering from oxygen deprivation due to a fever. She just needed an 4 drip and some rest at home. After sending the doctor away, I sat anxiously by the bedside. I felt even more guilty. If it hadn't been for the rain and me bringing her an umbrella, Lin and I wouldn't have caught a cold. After a while, Lindy's fever broke and she slowly opened her eyes. She looked around and realized she was in the hospital. I approached her with a guilty look on my face. How are you feeling, Lin and I? Lin and I looked confused and said, why am I in the hospital? You had a fever of 41.6 degrees Celsius. I couldn't wake you up no matter how hard I tried. I was so scared. The doctor said you would have died if we hadn't brought you to the hospital, I explained hurriedly. Oh, I just get fevers when I have a cold, Lin and I replied weakly. Then she seemed to suddenly remember something. She lifted the blanket and looked down. You brought me here. You dressed me in these clothes? Lin and I looked at me in shock and asked. I was suddenly embarrassed and didn't know what to say. I had forgotten about that. It was a special situation at the time, I tried to explain, but I couldn't explain the fact that I had indeed dressed her. Lindy's face turned red in an instant. A moment ago, she was pale and weak, but now she was so red that she looked like she was about to burst into tears. Then she screamed, "Ah, get out! You saw everything?" I lowered my head and didn't say anything, thinking about how to explain. Seeing that she was getting emotional, I quickly hid outside, thinking that I would talk to her when she calmed down. I waited outside the hospital room for Lynn and I to finish her four, not going back in to upset her. When the nurse went in to remove the needle, she finally came out. I looked at her, and she looked at me. Neither of us said anything. "Forget it, you were just caught in the situation. Just pretend you didn't see anything," Lynn and I sighed helplessly and said weakly. I was overjoyed and happily agreed, "Okay." Then we took a taxi home. As soon as we entered the door, when Lynn and I saw the chicken lying on the living room floor, she, who had been silent all the way home, suddenly seemed to regain her usual lively self. "Oh, not bad, brother-in-law, you're a good man. Hurry up and make me some chicken soup," Lynn and I said with an expectant look on her face. I picked up the chicken from the floor and said flatteringly, "You go back to your room and rest. I'll make it right away." "Whatever, you're so kind," Lynn and I said, then slowly walked toward her room. I let out a long breath. I entered the kitchen, turned on my phone, and started making chicken soup while following the steps in the video. I was busy in the kitchen. Lynn and I changed her clothes, ate an apple in the living room, and watched TV. After a while, I carefully carried a pot of chicken soup into the living room. When Lynn and I saw that I was done, she perked up. "It smells good. Hurry up and let me try some." Lynn and I couldn't wait to take a bite. It's delicious. "Not bad, brother-in-law. You're hiding your talent. It's delicious." Hearing Lynn and I say this, I felt quite happy. "Really? Let me try." I couldn't wait to take a bite. "Delicious, I forgive you, Lynn and I smacked her lips. Lynn and I was a foodie. When she saw something delicious, she forgot about her unhappiness, or maybe she wasn't really angry in the first place. In the days that followed, Lynn and I probably tasted the sweetness. She didn't want to order takeout anymore. Whatever she wanted to eat, she asked me to make it. I suddenly became the head chef of the household. Maybe I really had a natural talent. The dishes I made following the videos weren't exactly delicious, but they were at least visually appealing, fragrant, and tasty. They didn't fall short of the skills of a restaurant chef. Lynn and I said seriously, "Brother-in-law, this is your talent. I brought it out in you, so you should thank me." I laughed heartily. "Thank you, thank you." As time passed, Lynn and I became closer. We both grew to like each other more and more. On weekends, if people on the street didn't know us, they might really think we were a married couple. The night before my wife returned, Lynn and I looked at the messy room and decided to clean it up before she came back, so she wouldn't get angry seeing the place hadn't been properly tidied up in a month. We divided the tasks clearly. I vacuumed, and she wiped the floors, and we began to tidy up the room busily. We compressed a month's worth of work into one night. By the time we were done, we were both exhausted and sweating profusely. Lynn and I sat on the sofa, stretching out our arms and legs. "It's 10 o'clock, let's brush our teeth and go to bed. We have to work tomorrow." I broke the silence, stood up, and walked into the room. Lynn and I didn't move or say anything, just looked at me shyly. I assumed she was tired, so I didn't pay any attention to her and went back to my room. I took off my clothes and lay down on the bed, stretching lazily. Soon, I heard the sound of running water from the bathroom. It was Lynn and I taking a shower. Lying in bed, I sent my wife a message. "What time will you be home tomorrow?" Soon, my wife replied, "Tomorrow afternoon. Do you miss me?" Of course I do. How could I not? You know what they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? I immediately sent a mischievous smile emoji. My wife replied with a shy emoji. "I'm going to sleep now. I need to rest up for tomorrow." Seeing that my wife had replied with good night, I put down my phone and decided to go to sleep. Before I could get out of bed to turn off the lights, the door to my room was suddenly pushed open. I subconsciously looked up at the doorway and saw Lynn and I, her face red, holding her washed clothes and walking into my room, then calmly going to the balcony to hang them up. I was shocked and opened my mouth wide, my eyes wide. I was stunned by this sudden scene. I felt my throat go dry, and I couldn't make a sound. Lynn and I hung up the clothes, but didn't go back to her room. Instead, she stood there quietly looking at me. The air was still for a minute, then Lynn and I smiled at me with a red face and said, "Do you like it?" I didn't say anything, still in shock. Seeing that I didn't respond, Lynn and I seemed a little anxious and slowly walked toward my bed. Seeing Lindy's actions, I was so scared that I shrunk back toward the bed and stammered, "Lynn and I, what are you doing?" "I'm your sister's husband." Lynn and I was taken aback, clearly not expecting me to react this way when she was standing right in front of me. After a moment of silence, she laughed and said, "Look how scared you are. I was just teasing you. It's not like you've never seen it before. What are you afraid of?" "Come on." Then Lynn and I seemed a little disappointed and went back to her room. My heart was pounding, and I leaned against the bed, feeling a little dazed. After calming down for a while, I tiptoed to the door and peeked into the second bedroom across the hall. The door was closed tightly. I carefully closed the door to my room, hesitated for a moment, then locked it. Only then did I lean back on the bed and think about Lindy's actions just now. In a daze, I felt a little regret. My gaze fell on the clothes still dripping water on the balcony, and I felt even more restless. But in the end, my reason prevailed. Then I stared blankly for a long time. My mind was thinking about the recent events with Lynn and I couldn't sleep a wink. At around 2:00 a.m., I heard the door of the second bedroom across the hall open. It must have been Lynn and I getting up to use the bathroom. I shifted my gaze to the door and peeked through the crack, but didn't see any light coming in. She must not have turned on the light, I thought to myself. Lindy's footsteps suddenly stopped at my door. What is she doing at my door? I wondered. Then something unexpected happened again. I heard the sound of my door handle turning, but I had locked the door, so it didn't open. Then there was silence again. After a long time, I heard footsteps walking back to the guest bedroom, followed by the sound of the door closing softly. I sighed heavily, feeling as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my heart. I knew I had done the right thing, but I didn't know why I couldn't sleep. So I stared blankly at the ceiling, my mind a blank. I don't know when I fell asleep, but when the alarm went off for the second time, I opened my eyes groggily, feeling very sleepy and like my brain was about to explode. I tried to get out of bed. I didn't know if Lynn and I was in the living room, and I didn't want to see her. I waited until I heard her door close as she left for work before I dared to step outside. I spent the day at work in a daze. It wasn't until my wife sent me a photo of her arriving home that I finally came to my senses. I endured until the end of the workday and returned home. On the way, I thought about how I would deal with Lynn and I in the days to come. When I arrived home and opened the door, Lynn and I and my wife were sitting in the living room. Lynn and I was wearing a dress my wife had brought back from abroad for her, smiling happily. I pretended nothing was wrong and entered the room to chat with them.